welcome. It is Friday night, and this is episode 14 of MNFT Freedom. Tonight, we have a special guest joining us. We'll be dropping in a little bit here, but time zones a little bit tough to navigate. But what we hope to talk about tonight is real estate in Web3. And actually, I do see maybe he is with us. Mike, is that you?
Hey, Scott. So I'm still in the car. I'm almost to my office. But I realized I can actually start now while I'm in the car.
Awesome. Yeah, so, I was just doing a brief introduction. This is our MNFT Freedom Series. It is a education series on just financial freedom, right? So it gives people insights from, my history. Again, I'm not a licensed, financial advisor by any means, but and we have actually had them on the show, but we give our life experiences and share what we have done and how we have improved on those things and are educating the community through this. We thought it'd be fantastic because it is all about, how to better yourself, but also, the possibilities and things that are going to be coming in the future, especially in Web3. And I thought, who better than you to talk about, real estate with Web3, right? Because, that's what you're all about.
No, I really appreciate you having me today. And I know we tried a couple of times last couple of weeks, and I really appreciate you adjusting your schedule to have me on here today. And even then, I'm running a little behind, and kind of tells you how the market is doing, because I've had really interesting last few months, especially with our team and with our market. Everything has changed, but not in a bad way. Interest rate has gone up. Obviously, everybody knows for the entire world, almost, not just for our country.
Yep.
And
did we lose you? I think we lost Mike there, but yeah, he was saying that interest rates have gone up, and they have. They have more than doubled in the last 6 months, which is crazy. That's what we're dealing with. And, what do we do moving forward with that? Especially if you're interested in buying a property or a house, what do you look at as far as how does that make sense for you? And Mike, whenever you get set up there and are back with us, just, cut me off. But so, one of the things that I found interesting is back in November, prior to Thanksgiving, there was actually a NFT that was sold in South Carolina that was a actual house. It was a piece of real estate that, was really proving that you don't have just artwork or just in-game playable figures, or NFTs can be so much more than what we think they are. With that, anytime, Mike, you can jump in here, because I'm like but
hang tight 1 second. I'm actually just walked into my office, so just starting on my computer to turn this on. So just hang tight for 1 second.
No worries. Well, what I'll do while he's doing that is I would just share this. I did find this earlier, and this is what I was talking about. A house in South Carolina was sold as a non-fungible token, which shows that the possibility of Web3 being in the real estate market is very, very valid. It can definitely be a means for reduced fees, for better smart contracts, for transactions between the buyer and seller and so forth. And this article does go on to show NFTs as house deeds, and then home financing via DeFi, really, really great. But yeah, going back to the interest rates, which I know a little bit about, the whole idea there is the government is trying to slow down inflation, and they're doing that by, here we go. Hey,
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes,
All right,
and I can
sounds
see
good.
you.
Oh,
Yeah,
great. Good to see
yeah.
you, Scott.
Man, if I knew we were dressing up, I would have worn something more than a hoodie.
Well, you gotta remember, it's only 5 o'clock here, right? So
Yeah,
I just came from a meeting with a client. That's why I was running late. But you know what? Good news is we're both here and we made it finally. So
absolutely, absolutely. So let's start out with an introduction of who you are, and then also on top of that, what your background is in Web3. How you got started in crypto, how you got started with beginning your own project, and so forth. A little bit of history.
thank you. So my name is Michael Hawk. I'm first and foremost, I'm a real estate agent in state of California, and I've been in the industry for the last 18 years now, and counting. And just feels like I just started the other day, but it's been 18 years, which is amazing. It's been a very interesting journey, good and bad at the same time. Because when I started real estate back in 2005, six, market was kind of at its high, and immediately after that, a couple of years down the road, it just crashed. And we have all felt that. And if you're young enough, maybe you didn't experience that. But if you're anything like my age, or Scott, I don't know how old you are, but I feel like maybe similar age. But we have experienced that. The economy was it was a difficult economy at the time, right? So.
Yep.
So experience that's come with a lot of experience in that as a background for me, and I do have a team that I run for my business, real estate business, and we have a team of about 6 people right now, and that's beside what we're doing for the Web3 portion of it, which is in a constant change moving forward, and how that's going to be implemented in the real estate world, which has been a struggle to nonetheless, especially with the SEC regulations coming down the pipeline, and especially with securities issues, because when you're involving a real product, especially real estate, it has been a challenge. It has been a challenge, and we had to take a little bit of a pull back a little bit, and that's coming from all our lawyers basically saying, listen, you can move forward with everything you have planned and be the example. And also, not only that, everything that's going to change, you're going to have to redo all your process and procedures that you're trying to put in place. So with their advice, we had to take a bit of a back seat, not in a bad way, because I think more we understand what the government is looking for, better we can implement into our business model, right?
Yeah.
So we started the Web3 project beginning of last year. It's been a little over a year when we started the process. We launched our token in June 10th, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a great start. It wasn't anything crazy like some of your project. I know your project is still doing amazing. Our project is right now a bit of a standstill, and some people are on Telegram saying a lot of unusual things, which is
Well,
what it is, to be honest. That
Yeah.
none of that bothers me. We have a goal in mind, and in order to achieve that goal, we have to make sure we follow all rules and regulations. And we are
Yeah.
definitely not out there to hype up our project to make a few bucks, and somebody buys it low and selling it high, then vice versa. It's we're not about that at all, because at the end of the day, that's not what this project was meant to be.
Right.
Our project was meant to create generational wealth in the future and help our future generation to be able to have something more concrete, something more solid with Web3 platform. And I know you were talking about NFTs, buying houses through that, and I know I got cut off a little bit. And which came at a halt at this moment. I don't know if you have seen like too many deals has gone through like that not in the recent 6 months. There was a home that was in Florida. I think another state. There was another one out of the country, but there's another one, I believe, in North Carolina. So they've been trying it out little by little, but not at a point where it has been available to everyone. And I don't know if you recall, the one in Florida actually sold in 10 minutes. But one thing that a lot of people didn't talk about is that they actually, whoever was going to bid on that, they had access to all the information, the disclosures, the inspection reports, all this stuff, what repair was done. They had information prior to that. So it wasn't a blind purchase. And I think, in the crypto world, sometimes we just dive in without even understanding what the project is or whatever it might be. And don't get me wrong, I've been a part of that myself, and I backed off on that, to be honest. I learned quite a bit of lessons, lost quite a bit of money, but I think it was a learning process for all of us. That's Absolutely. Why what we're doing with our project right now, like, listen, we don't want anybody to lose money. And we don't have a whole lot of holders, and that's okay. Once again, our project was never meant to be like, oh gosh, you buy $10,000 worth of crypto today, and 2 years down the road, all of a sudden it turns into $5 billion, right? I mean, which is great. Don't get me wrong. If that happens, that would be great. But that was never meant to be that way. And real estate is never that way, right. Especially if you look at the last 2-3 years of what happened in the industry. It was great for one party only, and that was the sellers. Nobody else was having a good time. Buyers struggle. When you're representing a seller, that was good because you were like, you felt like you were the king because all this other real estate agent was coming to you like begging for you to accept their client's offer. And when you represent the buyer, it was a super stressful environment because what can you do to stay on top of that agent's mind and the seller's mind? And, what ended up happening, people are offering, let's say it's a $500,000 home, $500,000. People are offering $550,000, $600,000, $650,000, no contingencies, meaning no inspections. They were foregoing of appraisal contingency. So basically they're saying, hey, we have enough money. If there's a gap, we're going to make up the difference. Right. And this kind of thing was happening, and that can only go on for so long. And towards the middle of last year, just after that, what happened? The interest rate started going up. In my opinion, that was the best thing that could have happened to the industry. Not everybody will think so, and that's okay. But we needed to stop the madness because the way the homes were going up, it was gonna be a bad thing in the future, and the bubble that everybody was talking about, it was gonna burst at one point. But so we had to pull back from that, and which was a great thing. So the last quarter of 2022 was one of the worst numbers that you could have for the country as far as sale of the home goes, right? Because interest rate was up to 7%, some are higher. Now it came back down in January, February a little bit, which was great. It's going down to like 6%. Started selling again. So what's funny is that we went from like 3.5%, 4% to 7%. Then went back down to 6%, and people were buying again. So it wasn't so much the interest rate, but people are getting better deals now. And what I mean by that is, like, if a home is listed for $500,000, they're not longer having to offer $550,000 or $600,000. You could probably offer full price and say, you know what, I'm still going to do an inspection. I'm going to have appraisal contingency. So if there is a discrepancy on the pricing, we're going to be able to negotiate that. So that's happening. So it's still a seller's market, but buyers also have some rights to ask some questions today about the property. So they're no longer just like, oh, I'm going to take the property blindly and deal with whatever the precaution might be in the future, right? So which has been really, really good in my opinion. So we're still getting like 2-3 offers on a property depending on the house, but we're not getting the crazy numbers. But having said that, it's not everywhere. Every market is different. I was just talking to a buddy of mine from Los Angeles. He put a home on the market last weekend on Friday. He kept it open for 4 days, open house. Every day he said he got 50 plus people come through his open house. By Monday, they had 25 offers.
Wow.
It was crazy. And this just happened last weekend. And where I am, that usually follows about a couple of months after what happens in Los Angeles, because we're in 2 hours away from the Los Angeles area. So Palm Springs are just about 2 hours away. So it follows where we are. It's more of a resort town, vacation homes. So that sort of stuff. And we also do a lot of cash deals. So even with the high interest rate today, what's happening is that not everybody's getting a loan. They're getting a loan differently. So even if you have let's say you have a portfolio, it could be a stock portfolio, it could be a portfolio of homes. So whatever investment accounts you have with the investment company. By the way, this is not too many people are doing this, but people that are doing it, they're the one taught me this, especially a few of my clients. They go like, you know what? I don't have to sell my investment to go buy another home cash. Instead, they're borrowing against that investment.
Yep.
What ends up happening is that you are borrowing against yourself. And when you do that, you're paying yourself back interest. So you become your own bank. So, but here's the thing, not everybody's in a position to do so, right? But if you have $500,000 worth of portfolio somewhere and you can borrow against it without having to sell that investment, do so, because all you're going to do is pay yourself back. It's way better than paying 7% interest rate today. And even if you pay 2%, 3% interest on that, you're paying the interest rate to yourself. Becoming a bank. And a lot of people don't talk about that, right? So whatever portfolio you might have today, take advantage of that and borrow against yourself. That could be against your IRA account. That could be against your IRA, which is retirement. Pretty much all of the retirement accounts, and every account is different. So talk to your financial advisor or your investment company, whoever it might be. Ask them that question. I was surprised how many of my clients did not know this at all. And I tell them, like, listen, just simply make a phone call and call me back next day, see what they say. You'll be surprised. Some of the wealthy people that I know, they didn't even know this. Surprising to me. But they're super thankful because they didn't have to pay the high interest rate. It was just as good as cash. And all top of that, they didn't have to sell their investments, right? So there's so many ways to going about doing this, especially for this particular market today. But like I said, high interest rate was the best thing that could happen for today's market, to slow it down, take a breath, and move forward. And all these things happening today, with Chat GPT and all that good stuff. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of this, and that's been it. I don't see it as replacing human beings. I think it's enhancing industry. Yes, there's going to be some jobs that can be replaced, but new jobs will be created at the same time, right? And same thing for the real estate industry, and how we're going to be able to take advantage of through Web3 with that. I think it's going to have a huge effect on it. And how, that's something I can't discuss just yet, because I don't even know exactly how that will happen. So but we're working that out. I don't think even the top dogs in the industry, like Elon Musk and all these other people, they don't even know. They put a halt on it for the next 6 months, basically saying, let's hold on, because this is getting out of hand, because we don't even know what this is capable of and how dangerous it could be. It could be dangerous if computer takes over our world. In a way it has, but we're still in control at the moment.
Right. For now.
We like to think so. We are, right?
Yes.
So it's gonna be interesting, and one of the main reasons that we took a backseat, and a lot of people question us on this, and they can say whatever they want. That doesn't hurt us. That doesn't make us upset, and I understand their position. And we kind of had to take a backseat from all the drama that was happening in the crypto world. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. What happens, especially with the Twitter, and we step back from all that. So like, you know what, we have a goal that we're going to achieve, and that goal hasn't changed. All it has is it's just pushed back a little bit, trying to figure out and just make sure we do things the right way, rather than believe me, nobody wants to go to get in trouble and go to jail with the with the government. and
Right.
and and when our lawyers said, hey, listen, you need to back off, and we reevaluate. And at the same time, if anybody looks at our project, it was money still there. We're not, that's not the issue with this money that we spent for this particular project. It all came from our own pocket. We're not touching the project's money for this. And we knew what it will be like when we start this project. And we made sure that money that we were able to invest into this, not something that we needed right away, and we can hold on to it. So, and people that understand that, they're not talking, they don't have any problem with that. But people there, investing a couple of hundred there, a couple of hundred here, and they're hoping for 10 times return overnight. Good for you. If you make that happen, that's great. I think that only happened to me once or twice on the other projects before we started this project. And but more than half the time, that doesn't happen. So.
Yeah, and you make a lot of good points there. And, one of the things, going back to where you say you're kind of at a standstill chart-wise, I think a lot of projects are, especially the ones that are continuing to build in this time. And, it's because they're not sending out those false promises. They're trying to be as compliant as possible because they know that something's coming, right? Whatever those changes are. And, we're right there with you. If you look at, our overall chart, it's kind of been, a little up, a little down, but it's really just moving sideways. And, that's not because, of anything other than, we're continuing to build in the background. We're continuing to put content out there. We are, not, steering in any direction but the direction that we had originally set forth to do. And that says a lot, right? You're standing by your, what you said you're going to do, and you're following through, and you're making sure that you're going to be legal during that whole period, which is great. And I do. I lived through 2008 to 2010, and I know exactly what all that was. And it's crazy because for the last 6 months, I've been kind of saying, a lot of this feels very similar to what we've been through before. The only difference here is the banks weren't overextending their loans, right? So, there is something coming where we're going to see a pullback in the economy. And I personally look at it as, you look at the stock market and how that's performing. You look at, real estate. Real estate's not doing what it was doing 6 months ago. It's kind of normalized a little bit. Came back down. I was really hoping that would have held out for at least another 8 months or so. Wanted to get the kid out of the house and then sell, right? But that didn't happen. But everything is kind of coming back down. Interest rates are rising. And you said that, low was a little over 3%. I actually was a little lower than that because
I think it was somewhere around 2 sometimes at one point. I lost track of how low that was at one point, but that was, and if you could get a loan at that moment and locked it in, guess what? Good for you. That was amazing. And if you didn't, what can I say? We're not going to see those days, not in our lifetime, probably.
Yep. And I am guilty of that, by the way.
What's that?
I said I am guilty. I got that. I got a super stupid rate, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm in. And, talking about that, that 6% that we're currently at, that 7%, I mean, that's not
half right now, which is
okay.
Here or there. It's same. It's still high.
Yeah, well, you say it's high, right? But in 97, when we bought our house, the average rate for excellent credit was somewhere between 9 and 11%.
You are
So,
absolutely correct. You bring up a very good point here. And if we ask our parents and grandparents, let's go back in the 70s and 80s. Actually, it was in the 80s where the interest rate was as high as 18% for a typical loan. And you talk about that in the 97, it was, in the 11, 12, even in the mid to early 2000s, when the economy or the housing was doing in a great bubble at that moment, it was still 70%.
Yep.
I have friends who bought homes at that moment, it was 8% at that time.
Yeah.
But ever since that crash, our economy has been building back up, right? And it's been an upward momentum this whole time. And what happened? We got spoiled as a country. We forgot what it felt like, right? But if you talk to older generation, they'll be like, "This is nothing. We lived through this before."
Yep.
But us millennials and Gen Zs, who's finally getting to the market, and millennials started buying later in their life than most generation has, right? And there's a whole different conversation behind that. But majority of them buying in their 30s. And I think average age of millennials of buying house today is 34. And do you want to know what the number one reason for them to buy a house today is?
Mom and dad kicked them out.
No. Well, maybe that could be one. But number one reason is because they need a home for their pets.
Wow.
Number one reason. And here's another weird statistic. For the entire country right now, 70% of the household has pets, where only 40% has kids.
That's crazy.
That's the interesting numbers. I mean, I don't have kids, not yet at least. But that when I saw that where less people are having kids, they would rather have a pet, right? Where 70% of the household has pets, which is interesting numbers. It came from National Realtors of Association, which was very interesting to see 2 days ago. But no, interest rate has been it is high for what we have been dealing for the last 10 years, but it's not high when you look at the history behind it, like how high the interest rate was at one point. And
right.
This is what's going to happen. One thing I want to go back to where we're talking about like how the market is doing, right? Right now, even though interest rate is high, what many expected was the inventory was going to go high because not too many people was going to buy. But let's look at your situation, Scott. You got a great deal on the interest rate, right?
Yep.
If you were thinking about selling today, what will be the number one thought in your head? Like, what would you say?
Well, so my thought is with where I'm at, I was hoping to be able to just outright buy the next home. So I want to have enough liquidity in my house after, I pay off the mortgage and sell the house that I can just outright buy. Right. And then take out a light mortgage just for tax purposes, which I'm not sure that I need to after this past tax season. Right. But it's that would be my main goal. If I were selling the house to look at getting another house and a mortgage, my concern would definitely be interest rate, right? Because, now what I'm looking at is, to keep my payment to where it's at now, I have to buy a quarter of the house, right? Or a third of the house of what I've currently got. Right. And do I want to downsize to that extent and still have that same payment, right? It just doesn't make sense. And Megan and I, we have talked about this, because the plan was always, my son's a senior, he's going off to college this year. And our plan was, when he's off to college, we're going to downsize. We're going to go to a smaller house just for her and I, and, less to take care of, less to maintain. And looking at that now and what our mortgage is, I mean, we can't rent an apartment for what we pay a month for our mortgage, so yeah, I think, I'm just going to have to deal with the yard work and the maintenance.
They're worst problem in the world, right? But you just had a great point, and that's one of the one of the reasons why inventory is low today. So if you bought a home in the last 3 years, or even the last 10 years, because your interest rate has been, anywhere between 2.5 to maybe 4.5%, right? Worst case scenario, maybe 5 if you had a bad credit. But imagine today you were thinking about selling, but you can't, because exactly what you just said. Because if you sell and you need to go buy another house, your payments will be higher. Even with the equity you're going to put in there, your payments will be higher.
Right.
So those typical sellers today are not selling. So they're not putting it on the market, and inventory is not going higher. Now, do we go up from last year, that 12 months ago, what the inventory was like? Absolutely. For our marketplace, it tripled, but also is 50% down from prior to pandemic.
Right.
So imagine when you're cut down in half on inventory, what's happening? The demand is still there, and you don't have enough inventory. So moving forward, what's happening even right now, what we're seeing for the last 6 to 7 months, the interest rate been up almost 9 months now, to be honest. The demand hasn't gone away. So people are either waiting to buy, or they're waiting for the interest rate to come down, because some people, they can't afford it, right? So they have to wait. Others who can't afford it buy right now, they could potentially refinance and down the road when the interest rate does come down in the next couple of years. I think that's still a better option, because you buy at 7%, 2 years down the road, if you can refinance for 3.5%, 4%, whatever it might be, we don't know when it will be. And if you can hang on to that, it's still a better deal than paying extra $200,000, $300,000 for a home that's not worth that much, right? Because you get a better deal today. So, but the problem is those home buyers are standing on the sideline. They're either watching to see how the market does, or they cannot buy because they cannot afford it according to the scale for how lenders will give you a loan. So as soon as the interest rate comes down, even a little bit, some people are qualifying. Imagine if those interest rates came down to 5% today.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to them?
Yeah, market would go crazy, right?
Market will go crazy again. Imagine it goes below that. More people will qualify, and they're going to come at it like, well, we don't know how long this interest rate is going to stay where it is before it goes back up. I better jump on it.
Right.
It's going to create that issue all over again. So new home builders are actually taking advantage of this situation right now. Not in a bad way. I don't want to say take advantage, but they're able to sell the new homes today with low inventory. And there are other programs out there, and that's been able to help people, especially some incentives. Some sellers are actually buying down points for the buyers, where for the next couple of years, instead of 7%, they're going to be like, 3% below that, or 2% below the next year, which is a great program for the short term. But as you refinance in the next 2 or 3 years, that's a great program. But if you don't, it's going to go back up to 7. It's going to stay there, and that's not where you want to stay forever, right? So that pent up demand, we're just waiting to see when that's going to come, because and when it's going to come is when the interest rate drops. Interest rates already dropped in the last couple of weeks, even though inflation, I think I forgot the numbers, the most recent numbers, but it was a 7% just 2 weeks ago. It already down to 6.32, I think, for a 30-year mortgage, which is great. But imagine we go down to 5s. You're going to see like your market, every market, they need to buy. People need to buy, and depending on who you talk to, some people say like, "Oh, buying a home is not a good investment." I think they need to do some more research on their own when people say that.
So there's a catalyst there, right? So yes, buying a home is a bad investment if you think it's going to be a moneymaker. And what I mean by that is not that it's not going to go up in value, because it will. The value of my home from the time we bought it to now has substantially gone up in value. However, the amount of money that I had to put into the house to maintain it and to keep it, in good functioning order and whatnot, it really is almost a wash, right? Now, if you're buying a property as a investment tool, like a duplex, right, and you're renting half of it out and you're making money, as well as living in it now that is an investment.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, if I went back and tallied up everything that I spent on my home, I guarantee you I spent more than what my home's worth today, right? And that's just because it's maintenance, right? So if you're renting, you're paying a little bit extra in rent, but the landlord has to take that responsibility to keep up the property, right? If you're owning, well, there's no landlord. Now it's you, right? You're the one that has to maintain it. You're the one that if the windows need replaced, you have to put new windows in. If it needs a new roof, you got to put a new roof on. If, whatever it may be, I mean, heck, the first year we bought our house, our complete air conditioning and heating system went out. That was $10,000 right there that we had to dump out, right? And we had a home inspector come in and look over the whole house and give the thumbs up, and everything was good. But within a year, we had to drop an additional 10 grand on top of financing. So, those are things that, you have to take into consideration with home ownership.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not just a black and white situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely that investments involved. And going back to your within a year, you have to fix it. By the way, did you have a home warranty?
I don't think they did home warranties in '97. Come on.
Oh, this was back then. That's a good question. Into that.
But I've never heard of one, up until like probably the last, I don't know, 7-8 years.
Okay.
But yeah,
I know ever since I've been in the industry, but maybe it wasn't widely available at the moment, but could have saved you the $10,000 within the first year. Or I always recommend that, especially in today's market or ever in the last 18 years, we always have the seller pay for the first year. So especially because air conditioning, because where we live, air conditioning is the most valuable thing, especially for the summer months, right? So if that thing's out, it's going to be a very, very bad summer. So same thing with the water heater and all this other stuff. So no, I totally get that. There is a lot of investment that's involved. But one thing that I think a lot of people sometimes forget to realize is that with home ownership, yes, even if you are breaking even, you at least get that money back when you sell. Right? And we're also now talking about the potential of write-offs, taking depreciation on a home, tax write-off for all the interest rate that you have paid over the years, tax benefit for all the improvement that you have done over the years, right? So a lot of people don't talk about that, right? There are so many other benefits to owning a home rather than just simply owning one and selling and taking profit from it, right? But imagine, and I'm pretty sure over the years you have had all these write-offs and stuff like that with your accountant that and you couldn't even quantify because you got to really go back and look to see how you save for that, right? But if you paid rent for all these years, there will be no write-offs.
That's right.
No write-off. You're paying somebody else's mortgage. You won't be breaking even. Imagine for since 97. So, gosh, you 26,
25
years, 25, 26 years.
July will be 26. Yeah.
So let's calculate something real quick. So let's say $2,000 a month, right? Mortgage. I'm not.
That's less than that.
Well, I'm talking about rent. Let's say $2,000 a rent, right?
All right.
Is that fair to say in the area?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. For all intensive purposes, we're gonna just take that into account for 12 months. So that's $24,000 a year. Times that by 25 years. So that's $600,000, right?
Yep.
That you're paying for somebody else.
Yep.
If I was to lease today, right? It for the last 25 years. Now, if I put that money into my own home, at least when I sell it,
you get that out.
Let's say worst case scenario, I don't get all of it back. I get some of it back.
Right.
Worst case scenario, right? Best case scenario, I make a bunch of profit.
Yep.
Right. And not to mention all these other benefits that we talked about, tax write-offs, a property depreciation, right? So those comes into tax write-offs. And a lot of people don't talk about that. They're just like, oh gosh, when you buy a home, you have this, and that. But we're not talking about all these other benefits that people could have. And that's how a lot of wealthy people are taking advantage of the system, right? And well, not just wealthy people that know how to take advantage of this kind of situation, they do. And it's just a normal folks like you and I, sometimes we just don't either know or forget to ask our accountant that, because most accountants, they're not going to come out and tell you like, oh, let me take extra time to save you a little more money. We have to ask those questions, like, especially if they're not actual tax attorneys, right? They're just accountants. They're totally different. They're just there to make a few bucks, file your taxes, so you get whatever return you could potentially have. In my case, I never have a return. I always have to pay. So that's never a fun thing. So yeah, it's every situation is different, at the end of the day. And my thing is, like, when it comes to investing, it doesn't matter where if it's in crypto, is in real estate, is in stocks, diversification is like, that's number one. Don't ever put all your investment in one basket. Yep. Always spread it out, because you never know. Nobody has a crystal ball for what's going to happen next. And if we did, we'll all be wealthy, right?
That's right. That's right. I need that crystal ball, by the way. And then after I'm done with it, I'll send it to you.
Please. Thank you. I appreciate that. Especially what the government's going to do with the regulations, please.
Right. That would be good to know. So where do you see real estate going within Web3 in the next 5 to 10 years? And I bring that up because I don't think Web3 is going away. I think it's going to be utilized in a majority or a vast difference of utilities, right? I don't think it's just going to be crypto and just going to be NFTs. I think it's going to be broader than that. And, I feel like real estate could play a major part in that. What are your thoughts on it?
I think once we figure out what the regulations are, from there, we will have a better picture. I think especially what happened in the last couple of years, especially within the last year, what happened with the whole crypto world, right? You've had so many companies bankrupt, and some of the bigger ones, right? And where government is not going to be very easily influenced to be able to take care of these as efficiently or quickly as possible. They're going to look into every possible scenario. They're going to make sure like we're all taking care of how we need to take care of things, especially because it's actually real product, right? With especially real estate. So I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have better adaptation to this process, but not today. It's not happening right now. But next 5 to 10 years, I think a lot will change how we do business, how we take care of everything. Like I said, for a perfect example, like, ChatGPT changed so many things in the last 4 months. And it's scaring a lot of people, including the people in the industry who are creating this. It's scaring them as well. So that's going to have an impact on real estate. That's going to have impact on Web3, how that's done. I'm waiting to see how that affects the Web3 portion of it. I think in the next 5 years, we will be selling probably 10 to 20% of those properties in the country with that. 10 years, probably we're looking at more than that. But right now, it's hardly any that's being done. If anything, I think people are scaring away because of what's happened in the last year, especially with the crypto industry, right? And by the way, I'm happy to see what Bitcoin's doing, what Ethereum's doing right now the last couple of weeks, especially since, one of the banks took a nose. That was a crazy scenario. But so I think a lot of people don't know exactly what to do with their money today, because even cash is not safe, right? But most people, they do know one thing. They can, if they put their money in real estate, that's not going anywhere. You can't take that away from anyone, right? But stock market, crypto, they're super volatile right now, especially right now. And we're talking about the real recession really hasn't hit yet. And I agree. In my opinion, I agree with that, because we haven't felt the effect just yet. Yeah, some people are losing jobs, that's for sure. And I hope that scenario changes soon, because unemployment rate cannot go up. And also that's not good for the economy overall. But
Right.
as far as the real estate goes, I think more people are gonna bring their money into the real estate, and how we deal with that through Web3. That's gonna make a whole difference. And
Right.
our job is to we're trying to implement that in such a way so we can stay ahead of the curve rather than try to rush into it. Because in the future, I can easily see like the corporations like Amazon, or all these big guys. They're gonna be like just diving right into it with way more force and power than we will ever have, right?
Right.
But imagine if you are the one staying ahead of that curve and making sure that it's the system is already created for somebody to take care of.
Mhm.
That's where we want to be, and that's where our project is all about. So we're not. Yes, a lot of people are not hearing from us. Nobody's hearing from us. Matter of fact, thank you, and I commend you for tracking me down and getting me on here. By the way, I'm enjoying myself thoroughly, so I really appreciate this.
Yeah. And again, this is not a show. I mean, I am going to give your project a plug here before we call it a night. But this is. I know you're very professional in what you do. I know your team is very professional. I like what you're building and what you're doing in the space, and I thought your knowledge would be useful for others to listen to and understand. And I think you dumped a whole boatload of knowledge on us tonight. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem at all. And thank you for having me. And yeah, and you know what? To be honest, I didn't know about this particular. Must be a new channel. Like I think I saw like episode 14.
Yeah. So this is we have partnered up with MNFT.
Okay.
It is a LLC run by Rochelle Young. She is usually my co-host on these spaces. She must be tied up in a meeting or something, got her. But one of the things that you said earlier that I was just going to comment, that if she were here, she'd be like, pointing it out. Haven't I been saying that? About leading the way before the big guys kind of take it and run with it, so you can say you've already been doing it, right? So you can be in it before it begins. But her whole the whole idea behind MNFT is it's going to be a conference. We are planning on doing it this year, hopefully September. It looks like right now it possibly is going to be Louisiana, is where it's going to be held. But again, we're still nailing down the venue. But we have a great group of people that are, pulling all their efforts together and contributing to it to make it happen. And it's going to be 4 days of financial education. It's going to take you from your mindset and, the thought process and how to get started in investing, all the way through traditional means of investing, saving, to, more advanced into real estate, and ultimately ending up in the potential that Web3 could have for, for your financial future. I think, for us, or me especially, I think you might be a little younger than I am. But
you'd be some.
well, anyway, I think for me, it's always been, when I was just a little guy, it was like, you want to get, savings bonds, and, you want to get a CD, and those were the means of, investing, right? Putting money into a savings account. And, then I kind of evolved into, an IRA and a money market, and then into the stock market. And I dabbled in Forex, and, I've been kind of all over the place. And, several years ago, I got into crypto, and, ultimately started my own project because I wasn't satisfied with what I was seeing in the space. And, here I am today. And now what they're saying in the financial news is the best thing to invest in right now is U.S. bonds. I'm like, I haven't heard that since the 80s. Come on.
Right.
you know,
old school. We'll going back to the old school ways to do things. And there's something to say about that. Like those are more, yeah, you're not gonna make like 10%, 20% return, but slow and steady, 1 or 2%, and at least it's not going anywhere, right? At least you could be more secure about that. But we'll see how how it's gonna impact, and which I'm actually trying to understand in myself, like how all these other countries, they are not using US dollar as the reserve funds anymore, right? How that's going to impact in the world and the US. So I'm interested to see how that all that plays out. So we'll see how that goes.
I've been hearing and I don't know if it's a rumor or whatnot, but the dollar's being threatened by the yen as far as the world standard.
Right.
And, so that's kind of interesting, isn't it?
That is, and it's a whole another conversation, and more on the political side. And I don't usually like to get political, so
I got you.
I like to keep it that way, but nonetheless. But what I'm interested in is how that will impact us overall, not just the U.S., the rest of the world. How globally U.S. dollar was being used for everything. Now it sounds like it's almost going to be like 50-50 going into the future. Will that be a good thing, bad thing? We don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping it's a good thing. Where one country is not in charge of everything, but in a way we were for the last 80 plus years.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a good run, for anyone. But at the same time, I think it's going to be a good change to see. But I hope it's for the better. That's all I can say. And if anybody else has other comments, and I would love to hear them, because I would like to educate myself as much as possible. It's the only way to move forward and grow.
Yeah, I have a theory, and I think
what do you got? Let me hear it.
And it's only a theory because of how mass adopted everything kind of came with Web3 in this last bull run, right? We got hit with COVID. People were home. They had nothing better to do, and the government's handing out money, right? So extra money that they didn't have before. They didn't have working the regular job, right? I know with the employees that I have, they were making more staying home than they were coming to work. So, you look at that and you take that nationwide, right? And now you throw in crypto and NFTs into that mix, and people are sitting at home, can't really go anywhere, country's on lockdown, and they start researching this, and they're thinking, well, maybe I can make a buck here. And now all this money floods in, right? I think that was an initial attempt to go to a digital currency. And it may not be Ethereum, it may not be Bitcoin, but I think, the government ultimately is going to have some kind of a digital currency that may be broader than just one nation, right? It may span, the globe. They may be working with other countries, but I think that is their goal, because then they can get all of their money, right? They don't have to worry about, the transactions that happen in cash, the waitresses or waiters that, get money and tips that they don't claim, because, they also get a salary, right? They only have to claim them if it's, they should claim them, but, realistically, come on. They claim it if it's a credit card tip versus, a cash tip, though they can just throw that in their pocket and say, well, I didn't get any tip for that. Right. Right. So, I think it's just, that governments reach to kind of get more money, and it's not money that doesn't belong to them, because technically by law, every transaction, or if you're earning more than $500 a year, doing anything, you need to report that, but if those transactions happen in cash, are those people really reporting it? Probably not.
Probably not.
So I that's my theory. And I think, you know, what happened here is with all the stuff that's gone on with FTX and, you know, the bank, what SVB, right?
Yep.
I think, you know, that has forced the government to look at, you know, regulation a little bit more severely, where I think it was a little lighter handed. And because of those instances, they have to be a little bit more secure. Now, I don't think crypto is ever going to become, you know, what the stock market is or what, you know, the banking industry is. And it's because it's worldwide. And, you know, they can really only control U.S. assets,
Right.
as far as federally insuring them, okay, and giving that sense of security. So I don't think it's going to be to that extent, but I think there's going to be something. And until we figure out what all that implies, you know, we're getting little tidbits here and there, but until we figure out exactly what all that entails, I think it'll be an interesting run for sure. You know,
I think next 5 to 10 years, the some of the changes that are going to happen, either we're not expecting, or we already are expecting it's actually going to happen, or some of the changes that's going to be so brand new to us that we're not going to know what hit us, right?
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
and in pandemic, I think what happened with the Web3 is that it gave it a boost, especially through pandemic, because we had no other option, right? We had to think outside the box. We had to do this. But at the same time, what happened in the last year with in the space of all this stuff, it also holding us back, right? So there was a boost, but now we're holding back. And that's just so the whole thing, not just one person, one project. I think everybody, in my opinion, that we should be taking a step back and reevaluating how to move forward the best possible way, especially if you have good intentions. And you should have good intention, because you are holding people's money at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what project it is, right? And that's where, unfortunately, we want the government to, we want the government to stay away, but unfortunately, they have to step in order to assure that you and I do what we said we're going to do. And if we don't, we're held responsible at the end of the day, right? And that's what's happening with FTX right now,
Yep.
Yeah. So that's another
right.
one.
Okay. So we got 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop this up here. And Mike, I want your best 2-minute shill on REIT token.
Oh gosh, we're shilling.
Just give me your 2-minute elevator pitch.
Yeah. But hey, listen. So REIT we created out of the necessity to how to implement real estate into the Web3 space. And this is not a securities token. This is a REIT token. The benefits that we have is 3 different staking, ETH rewards, and also our goal is to help with down payment assistance program, and also helping with renewable energy, and also education. And a lot of this stuff some of this stuff was supposed to happen starting the first quarter of this year, but we did have to take a bit of a step backwards, which is okay. Some great things takes time, and we don't want to rush things to make any sort of mistakes, especially because we're also looking to create a securities token for real estate that's going to be connected to this REIT token. And that's one of the reasons that we want to make sure we do things properly. So we don't want to do anything that was or is going to be scrutinized by the government or anybody. So that's why that's one of the reasons what's taking so long. But we do have a solid foundation. We do have a senator on team, and he's still involved. I know a lot of people haven't heard from us in the recent months, but rest assured that doesn't mean anything. If anything, we are working behind closed doors to make sure that we do everything the right way. But do take a look at us, and we're not going to shield to a point where like, hey, we're going to hype this project up as much as possible, and that's not our goal. But listen, if you invest in us, just remember, this is a long-term project. You're not going to make 10 times overnight, over a week, over a month. This is a long-term project. And if that's not something works for you, I highly recommend you don't invest in our project. But if you do believe in longer term project and what we're trying to do and our goals, invest in us. And I can rest assure you, your money is not being used for anything. Our funds are not going anywhere. If anything, I know ours are locked for 12 months. And when the time comes, we're probably going to extend it for another 6 to 12 months, just depending on the time. When the time comes, we'll discuss that. But as of right now, it's locked and we're not touching that funds. We don't need to, because our goal is way different. Our goal is not to take this money and do something else with it. Our goal is to take this money and actually improve the project. But right now, we're investing our own money, all four of us putting our own money into the project to make sure this project goes where it's supposed to go. So ask us questions. And, I know a lot of people are making comments on some channels, Telegram and whatnot, but ask us a legitimate question. Don't just make silly comments that doesn't do us anything. You're not going to get any response out of us. We're not that type of people. We don't react to things. So, but yeah, ask us any questions. That is a good question about the market. How I really appreciate Scott having me here today, talking about how we're going to implement Web3 in real estate. And we all know this is a process. This is not an overnight accomplishment. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of changes, and how that changes come about, that's yet to be seen.
Yep. And I appreciate that. I've been, of the mindset and, telling people to do their due diligence, right? I will answer any question that anybody has, and any good team will, but do not buy because a team tells you it's going to 10x, right? You want to buy because you looked into the project, you read their business plan or white paper in this space. You understand what they're all about, what they're working towards. You've seen what they've accomplished and what they're currently building, and you find value in that. And if that is the case, then maybe that is an opportunity for you to invest in it. And, I love the way you put it. And that is exactly the way it should be. It should be no different than any other investment. It should be, do your research. Don't buy in because, Joe down the street says, hey, this is going to 100x next week. Do it because you understand what the project is all about and you believe in it, and plan on holding it for a long period of time. Now, with that, always have your goals set in place that, hey, once I hit my target of whatever it may be, it might be a 3x, it might be a 10x, it might be a 100x, whatever your goal is, and be willing to wait for it to get there. When it gets to that point, then at that point, follow your strategy and take whatever profit out that you plan on taking out. My investing strategy with the stock market is I buy a stock with the idea that I'm buying that company. I have all the money in the world and I can outright buy that company, and I'm buying it and holding it until, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, right? I look at that with crypto as well. I bring that strategy here. And during a bull market, you can be a little bit more, day trader-esque. But in this market, you have to really, really be paying attention to be making any money. So, I think, this is the ideal market for people to get started in, because it makes you do your research and understand what you are putting your money behind. And, with that, I think REIT Token is a great project. They have a thorough team and a thorough business plan. And I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you, Scott. I'll finish with one thing here. When it came to crypto, like, so many people had the idea, like, you're going to become rich so quickly, and few has, right? No doubt about it, but that mindset is not going away, unfortunately. Right. And so everybody's hoping for getting rich overnight. And once you move away from that mindset and you look at it as a true investment and looking at the project like stock was same thing. Like you're not going to buy a stock that you think it's just going to be there for a couple of nights and it's gone. That's going to be there for many, many years. So that's one of the things they're talking about today. This is a perfect situation to create generational wealth for the next 10 to 15 years. They're talking about there's going to be so many millionaires and billionaires going to be making in the next 10 to 15 years, not overnight, because before you couldn't buy a lot of this stuff, but today you have an opportunity and you invest in the right product or right stock, right crypto, right real estate market, you're going to do well for the next 10 to 15 years, but you have to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight. And just make sure whatever you invest that you are able to invest without actually touching that money ever again, or being able to borrow against it. Like I was mentioning earlier, if you can borrow against your portfolio, that's a wonderful thing. And then you get to benefit both worlds. You get to benefit from the investment itself and borrowing against it and using that money to buy, I don't know, income property or whatever it might be that you want to invest in, and you get rental income from it or some sort of return from it, right? So patience is the key for the next.
Absolutely. 100%, 100%. And with that, we are an hour and 6 minutes. We are going to call it a night. Fantastic. And anytime you want to pop on for any other episode, just send a shout out. We always hold these Friday nights at 8 o'clock. And every week is a different topic. If you just want to pop in and say hi or contribute, you're always welcome. Just let me know. I'll send you the link. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Absolutely. You have a great night, guys. Have a good one. See you next week.